don't need a hat. Show off my sexy bald head. Go! First try, nailed it, didn't even think.
Thank you very much.
All
yeah.
right.
I haven't been practicing really.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Editing the Academy. I'm Daryl.
I am Laura.
And Laura, what year are we talking about this time?
We are talking about the 1975 Best Picture nominees, which are the movies that were produced between January 1st and December 31st of 1974.
And what are the 5 pictures we're going to talk about?
The 5 pictures are The Conversation, Chinatown, Lenny, The Godfather 2, which was the winner, and The Towering Inferno.
All right. So other notables, because I remember to do it this time, other films that came out that year: The Man with the Golden Gun, The Lords of Flatbush, The Great Gatsby, A Woman Under the Influence, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, The Street Fighter, which is a Sonny Chiba, early Sonny Chiba film, and the original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. So
You forgot Harry and Tonto, which is the movie that Art Carney won Best Actor for over Al Pacino and Gene Hackman.
For this year?
For this year.
All right, fair enough.
So there you go. Terrible movie. Just had to throw it in there.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that we start this time with Chinatown.
Okay.
Because the rest of them I have more to say about. This one I don't really have a lot to say.
All right.
So Chinatown, an American neo-noir mystery film directed by Roman Polanski, no longer in the country, from a screenplay by Robert Towne. Film stars Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway, John Huston was a fantastic director in his own right, Perry Lopez, John Hillerman, Daryl Swearling, Diane Ladd, and it was inspired by the California Water Wars, which were a series of disputes over the Southern California water at the beginning of the 20th century. Fascinating facts. Fun facts.
Fun facts are that water war, one of the people that was in it was the water commissioner Mulholland, which you may
Mulholland Drive.
know of from Mulholland Drive. And also, I won't go into the details, but this is the film that started the long-ranging war between Polanski and Faye Dunaway.
Oh.
That is an issue in its own right that started when he came over to set and her hair wasn't looking right, so he plucked a hair out of her head.
Ow!
Yes, and
Okay.
she may or may not have thrown a cup of urine at him. That is a disputed fact by both parties.
Okay, so this one was nominated for a lot of things. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Original Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Dramatic Score, Best Sound, and it only won for Screenplay. I had seen this film before, you had not?
You want me to start?
Sure.
So I have not seen this movie before, and I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic movie. I thought it pulled together every aspect of a great movie. It pulled together a great story, great characters, strong performances. It was beautifully shot. I mean, the lighting and the shadows, gorgeous. Art directions, costumes. Faye Dunaway's eyebrows deserved a nomination themselves. The hair, the score. It was perfect film noir. I'd never seen it before. I absolutely enjoyed it. Couple of things, the tension was amazing throughout. There was a couple of scenes that were very tense, like when he was going through Ida's house and, found her dead body. The police were there. I thought that was really, really well done. He and Faye Dunaway had immediate electric chemistry between the two of them, which I thought was great. It was very dark, it was very complicated, but it didn't seem complicated because of the way Jack Nicholson was uncovering things at the same time the audience did.
Sure.
I thought they did a beautiful job with that. We've talked about, I like Jack Nicholson, I don't love Jack Nicholson, and in this movie I love Jack Nicholson.
Really?
Like in the first moments of the movie, it sets him up as, we know what he does, we know he's very successful from his office, from his dress.
He's got employees?
He's got employees.
Not just like the standard dame sitting at the
Exactly. He did have that as well, but
Yes.
I thought it was fantastic. And there was one particular shot I thought was very interesting when he had the camera trained on Hollis and Catherine, and you could see him looking through the camera, but the audience could also see what he was seeing through the reflection of the camera lens. I'd never seen that done before, and I thought it was really good.
Like it or not, him as an individual, Roman Polanski was an innovative director. So
I
we'll
think
give him that.
not like him would be the fair. I think that is fair, that we should not like him as a person. Granted, there is no question of his actions. He is an amazing filmmaker, and I thought it was a beautifully done film that cannot be taken away by his legacy.
So, a couple questions for you. One, do you like noir kind of movies?
I do.
Okay, so I think being a fan of that kind of genre, which this is not one of the first by any means.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
been big in the 30s, 40s, Maltese Falcon, all that. Being a fan of that genre, your expectations are a little bit higher going in,
Mhm.
knowing it's that kind of thing, like will they pull it off, will they do it? So I've established a couple rules,
Okay.
and you see if you agree with me. Basically, I'm just going to call them private investigation movies. So
Okay.
not necessarily noir itself, but a private investigation movie. Because the way you're giving the information is very specific, because you're seeing it as one person is uncovering it throughout the entire
Exactly.
thing. So, how good are they at their job? Is it a bumbling person who just stumbles upon it, or are they really good at their particular job?
He's excellent at his
He's
job.
very good at his job, absolutely. How lucky do they get? That ends up being a plot point a lot, like where suddenly they just stumble upon something and it's like, oh, now we get to move the plot forward.
Absolutely, because if Ida had not called, there was the phone call that said, look in the paper for the obituaries, find the retirement home. So yes, there was a lot of luck along the way.
Okay.
And tell me if you disagree with my pronouncements. Yeah.
I'm 100% in agreement with you. Any good noir or detective movie, it follows the rules of slow information and not too much information, unless it's a big reveal that's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Did this follow that particular rule?
I thought that it did, especially when it came to the role of Catherine, of, oh, Hollis is seeing somebody. Now she's disappeared. Now Faye Dunaway has her somewhere. And then you find out, of course, the sister-daughter reveal. So yeah, I thought that one especially, you got dribs and drabs of information.
That scene in particular, the sister-daughter thing, she's my sister, she's my daughter, slap,
Yep.
slap, slap. That's a scene that people go back to quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Even the first time I saw it, it seemed a little over the top to me. And I don't know if that was just the direction, the acting. Faye Dunaway seemed like she was kind of overacting. I thought she was kind of overacting a lot in this movie myself. Big A acting.
Mm-hmm.
But that scene people go back and forth on a lot. Did it work? Was it too over the top? Should they have downplayed it? What are your thoughts on that individual scene?
So I did think that it was a little bit overacting. I did think it was a little bit over the top, but I also think that's a little bit noir.
Yes.
So it didn't bother me because of the type of movie that it was. If it was another type of movie, if it was in the Towering Inferno, it would have bothered me a great deal. Because I thought it fit the genre, it didn't bother me.
And
It's a stylized way of acting, the way everything else was stylized to me.
And that's a good point, that particularly noir films, they are a little bit more
They're big.
overacted. Yeah, they're more theater going, projecting to the back row than
Right.
anything else. So, okay.
I did also read that she had him slap her in the movie
Oh.
because they weren't kind of getting the energy that they were looking for. And so she pulled him aside and said, you're going to have to just smack me. And he did. But don't pluck a hair out of her head.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
The choice to not do it in black and white, but to do it in a very stylized color palette.
Very bright.
Yes. Do you think that worked, or would it have worked better in black and white?
I would have liked to have seen this in black and white just to see the differences, but I think this particular movie, I thought it was just, again, so beautifully shot. I enjoyed the brightness of it all. And I thought also just like the seedy underbelly was just so, in Chinatown, was juxtaposed to all the brightness throughout the movie. So it's like the two sides of the coin, I think we were being shown.
I think, for me personally, the choice to do it in that very stylized colorway does enhance the story, particularly as this is a story set in southern sunny California.
Yes.
So that's like another little element. If it had been like Chicago or New York, I think black and white would have worked fine, but to highlight California,
LA,
yeah. The color worked. Also, the thing that I always remark on with this movie is like, who knew that something as very mundane as water rights could be an interesting story?
Exactly. I don't know why they would have thought of that, but it absolutely was. Absolutely.
I didn't really have a lot of criticism on the movie. Having seen it, I think this is my third time.
Mm-hmm.
I did find myself drifting off. this is not a movie that you can infinitely rewatch and still have it hold your engagement. So I did find myself drifting, but I was right back to the first time that I watched it and remarking on the performances, and more importantly, just the overall story in this one is engaging enough, and it does keep you going, even through the ridiculous moments. Like, you know, when she's driving off and he's just standing there shooting the gun, and they're like, okay, and their cops are right there. Okay, exactly. Fine, we'll buy it. That's fine, we'll buy it. But even during those moments, I was still like, okay, this is fine.
The only nitpick that I had was with the various henchmen. So he had a couple of folks working for him, and Hollis, and there was people working for the water district. There were people working for John Huston. There were people working for the cops. None of these henchmen had any personalities whatsoever.
Right.
But like a couple of times when he showed up somewhere, I'm like, oh wait, are those his guys or are those the cops? Like who?
Yeah,
is there going to be
became
trouble?
that blurry background.
They became interchangeable. They all came from central casting henchmen.
Yep.
And so I think if they'd even given one or two a personality, I gotta get home to Sally or something, so I could tell them apart. And maybe that was just me, but that was a criticism.
Yeah, I think you're looking for a little bit more than what the average film, and this was above average, but this is a very typical movie of its time.
Yes.
I think you're looking for more depth than was actually in a lot of these films at that time, particularly with big casts like this.
Very true.
Your role is, you're from central casting, you're going to stand there, you're going to look like a thug. Just, that's your job.
And they did that very well.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, I enjoyed the heck out of it upon a rewatch. I do believe that it would deserve to be nominated for this particular year.
Fully agree.
We'll discuss whether or not it should have won.
Mm-hmm.
All right, your choice. What are we doing next?
All right, let's stay in the C lane and go with The Conversation.
Okay.
Tell us about The Conversation, Darryl.
The Conversation, another neo-noir kind of mystery thriller, written, produced, and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, so we had 2 this year. Mm-hmm. Starring Gene Hackman, John Cazale, Alan Garfield, Cindy Williams, Frederick Forrest, Harrison Ford, Terry Garr, and Robert Duvall. It was nominated for Best Picture, Screenplay, and Sound. Did not win anything. And what are the interesting, fun little trivia facts about this one?
So, of course, 1974, so you're thinking Nixon tapes, wiretapping. That had nothing to do with this. This was actually a story that was written in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't produce it until the 70s, but everyone assumed it was a reaction to Nixon's White House tapes. And the other piece is that Coppola said that Gene Hackman had a really hard time getting into this character because he was, at least at that time, a very easygoing, approachable. He always wore casual hip clothings of the time. And this guy was so buttoned up and straight-laced that he had a real hard time finding him.
That would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes sense, I think, how this movie got probably greenlit. And the only reason I think this movie got greenlit was because of the success that he had with The Godfather.
Absolutely.
Because this, on the surface, is not a movie that any studio is going to be like, yeah, this is our moneymaker.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, in this one, we're starting to really see how directors develop relationships with actors and keep bringing them back. Because there's a lot of reoccurring people in this one, like Robert Duvall, etc. Harrison Ford is part of the group that's coming up.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see that develop with actors, and we'll continue to see it obviously throughout the decades. But this is just one of those first kind of hints of directors really establishing that they trust an actor, etc. The big comment has always been that 90% of a director's job is casting, and you can see that in certain films where the casting is just so immaculate that the direction the direction takes a back seat to just allowing the characters to be themselves. So I thought the casting in this was phenomenal. It opens with this huge, what they call tracking shot, which was done on a cam. Nowadays it would just be done with a drone, send a drone up. And I thought that was an interesting choice. Again, you know how much I love an opening.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a great way to open the film because you're listening to the conversation, and you're following the people go through the crowd, and so you're establishing right away the technology involved and what is actually happening for setting everything else up later on and making it big like that, because the rest of the movie is so small.
Very small. Yeah.
That I thought that was a great way to start, and then we're going
Very
to
claustrophobic at points.
I don't really have a lot of criticisms of this movie. One of the biggest ones I have is his jacket.
It's a terrible jacket.
It is. It's like, in certain light it's see-through. It's kind of a rain jacket, so why are you wearing it when it's so sunny? Why are you wearing it all the time over this three-piece suit? Like,
because he's a spy, and that's what spies do.
but there's no, like, they don't address it, they don't talk about it, and it is such an odd and obvious choice that I want something for why are you wearing this jacket?
It's wired or something.
Yeah, and there's nothing. It's just such an odd choice to be meandering this entire movie in this jacket, which he does not take off for most of it. It bugged me.
That's where I totally get it. It did not bother me in the moment, but I see it.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you, like I gave you permission. You talk for a couple minutes, because then I have a couple questions, because there's debate over this movie.
Okay, I would be interested in those questions, because that may be where I come along as some of the problems I had with it. So,
Okay.
Like the other one, this is the first time I've seen the conversation. I had not seen it before, and I loved the opening shot. I loved the first half hour. It had a great atmosphere to it. I thought Gene Hackman throughout the movie just gave a wonderful performance. You could see who this man was.
Yes.
He was very rigid and buttoned up and religious and moral, and the fact that his job might lead to immoral things was terribly problematic. He was proud of his job. He liked being the guy that was called upon at this convention as, oh, you're that guy.
Yeah.
And so he absolutely loved that. He had deep-seated paranoia. So all of that came through Gene Hackman's performance. And you could see the beginnings of that. Loved his relationship with Cazale. I thought that was very interesting. And I loved the last 5 minutes of the movie. In between, it had moments of greatness, and it was deeply uneven and weird for me. So that's kind of where I was. So I think, again, the pros were, I loved, kind of like he was bragging a bit. You could tell that he loved being well thought of. The confession booth. It didn't tell us that much stuff, but it was the tell versus show. It showed us so much about him, which I enjoy. I thought that the moment when they were on the elevator with Cindy Williams and he was trying not to be seen because he thinks that she knows who she, very tense, very well done. And then there was also lots of moments of Groundhog Day. Let's play the tape again. Let's play the conversation again. And I know each time we got an extra syllable or an extra word. And I saw what they were going for, and it was very effective for a bit. And then I think it just went on a little bit too much for my taste. And then the ending in the hotel room of, I'll be honest, I am still not sure what part of that is real and what part of that is delusional.
Okay.
So is that where the questions come in?
Some of it. So
Okay.
the dream sequence, the
Yes.
quote-unquote dream sequence.
Yes.
From that moment on, is everything a dream? Does he come back to reality? What is actually going on? That's one of the things that people have questions about. I think it's just a dream sequence that was thrown in because, hey, let's throw in a dream sequence.
Yes.
I don't think there was any real relevance or necessity to it.
I think it just shows his paranoia, his deep-seated paranoia.
And I personally think that they dive way too deep into his paranoia for this.
Yes.
That would be a different movie. That would be a Hitchcockian thriller. That it seems too much for this story that they were telling.
And that seemed to be the entire purpose of Terry Garr's appearance in the movie too, was there's this girl he's got on the side, and then she wants to know some things about him. Here's a person that I'm dating that maybe is setting me up in my apartment. It was all very unclear. And I want to know more about him, and he's not sharing at all. And then he starts to question, why is she asking me these questions? And then I start to question, why is she asking him these questions? Is this part of the bigger conspiracy? Which I think it's not, but it was odd.
That's interesting that you think that she was a girlfriend. She's a prostitute.
I did not get that at all. I absolutely thought that she was just kind of someone he put up in the hotel. Or in a room somewhere.
I've always thought that she was a prostitute
Interesting.
that he visits, and that's
he loved her.
That's,
he's all but admitted.
Yeah, did he?
To the other woman, when he said something about like, how do you know when you love somebody or something like that.
Okay.
I think he was trying to work that out.
I think that type of person, someone that he pays for
and sex
is
worker
in
is the
control.
right word. Just FYI, sorry.
Prostitute, sex worker, what's really the difference?
We're
different debate. Different
exactly.
debate. But I think
right.
that's the type of person that he could be comfortable in a relationship with because he controls it 100%.
That makes so much more sense, actually. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I didn't see that at all.
That's my interpretation.
Now that you've said that, I see that. Yes, I
Okay.
think that's probably true. And again, it's the control issue.
So the big one is the phrase that they keep going over and over and over, which is, he'll kill us, I'm just going to do it deadpan,
Okay.
he'll kill us if he gets the chance. Now, the first part of that, when they first hear it, the emphasis is on the first part of
Right.
that. In the latter part, the emphasis is on the us part of it.
Yes.
So during the course of this, it switches. Now, does that really matter? The film wants you to think so, but does it really matter? Does the emphasis really change it from the focus of one to another?
I think the emphasis matters as to whether or not you believe they killed Robert Duvall.
Okay.
If you believe they killed Robert Duvall, then the emphasis on us is critical. And if you think this was all a delusional dream in his head, then it really doesn't matter how they were saying it one way or the other.
Because that's the illumination point
Yes.
for him when he
hears
understands
it
that
that way.
inference. Right. Then he's like, oh, they actually killed this person. Honestly, I didn't buy it either way.
Okay.
There wasn't enough build for that to make sense. I know they kept going back to it, back to it, back to it, back to it, but I think this is just myself an example of poor writing. The movie itself suffers from a lack of not fully developed writing, in my estimation. I think that if he was super excited to have this project that he had in his back pocket for years, finally able to do it, and he rushed ahead and did it, and didn't take the extra time to really work on the script and get it exactly the way that it was supposed to be. That's my belief.
My belief is very similar in that I think Francis Ford Coppola knows, and it's very obvious to him. And it was not obvious to us.
Yeah.
So I think he knows, but he was not able to execute it in a way that made it obvious for everybody.
And he didn't have anybody else that he was writing this one with. This was 100% himself, with The Godfather 1, which is a near perfect script.
Yep.
He and Puzo worked for months, if not years, to get it absolutely correct. Same with the second Godfather.
Yep. No one's going to say no to him at this point in his career.
Right. And this is this is a vanity project that not, I guess, technically a vanity project, but it is a project that he wanted to get done merely because it's something he wanted to do.
It's close to his heart.
Yes. And so he got the green light, and I wish he'd just spent a little bit more time with the script and the points that really needed to be hit.
Yes.
Because a lot of it just gets kind of lost in the murky nature of everything else that is going on. Because we do spend a lot of time with those people from the convention, like a good 20-25 minutes of them just partying it up. And why? There's no necessity for that.
Because, and I'll go back to your question about the noir, it's a plot device. They need to have somebody in that warehouse to steal the tapes in order to move the plot forward. Because my big nitpick is this man who controls everything and is very paranoid is not going to let some conventioneers and their girlfriends, wives, prostitutes perhaps, sex workers, come into his warehouse.
Yes.
And
that
he does.
That was very uncharacteristic.
It was super uncharacteristic, had to happen for the woman to be able to steal the tapes.
Okay, and I get all of that. My point is that there was so much time spent.
Yes. It was,
like, you could have done this in 10 minutes, not 20. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, totally agree.
In comparison to the others, did it deserve to be nominated?
I do think it deserved to be nominated. I think that there was a lot. Again, even just listening to that other list of things that were nominated, I think it was a good nomination. I'm glad to have seen it. Question for you.
Yeah.
Did they kill Robert Duvall?
The two?
Yes.
That's what we're led to believe.
Yes.
And honestly, I didn't care.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, the movie wants you to think that because of the reinterpretation of the phrase that is exactly what happened.
Yes.
So I will go with what the movie wants me to believe.
The thing that throws me off every time is even he thinks he sees Robert Duvall in a body bag on the hotel bed, which he of course never sees, and it's all a figment of his imagination. And that's what he ties into seeing the blood and hearing the call. So since I know that not to be true, it throws the rest off for me.
All right.
Okay.
Are you good with that one?
I am good with that one.
All right, let's talk. We're going to save Lenny for second to last, if
Okay.
you don't mind.
Totally fine.
So we're going to do Towering Inferno.
Okay.
So Towering Inferno, American disaster film, furthering the trend of disaster films. Directed by John Gillerman and produced by Irwin Allen, featuring an ensemble cast led by Paul Newman and Steve McQueen. Adapted by Sterling Silliphant from the novel The Tower, by Richard Martin Stern, and The Glass Inferno by Thomas Gwydia and Frank Robinson. In addition to McQueen and Newman, the cast was pretty stellar for the time. William Holden, Faye Dunaway, so she's twice, Fred Astaire, Susan Blakely, Richard Chamberlain, O.J. Simpson, Robert Vaughn, Robert Wagner, Susan Flannery, Gregory Sierra, Dabney Coleman in a very early role, and Jennifer Jones in her final role.
Oh, was that her final role? Oh, okay. Interesting.
So it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Film Editing, Original Dramatic Score, Best Song, Best Sound. It won for Song, Editing, and Cinematography.
Excellent. My biggest fun fact on this one was we had talked about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that they wanted Steve McQueen to be Sundance Kid, and there was a question of billing.
Yep.
So in this one, there was a big fight over billing. So Steve McQueen and Paul Newman each got $1 million.
Yep.
Steve McQueen's name was first. Paul Newman's name was second and higher.
Ah.
And in the opening credits that flashed across when they were doing the helicopter scenes through the city, Steve McQueen's name was first. In the end credits, Paul Newman's name was first. So that's how they got around it, was they were just playing. Can I start this one?
Hold
Okay.
on. I do have a couple interesting facts
Ooh,
with this one, because
fantastic.
this was such a massive hit for the year that I wanted to do some comparisons
Ooh,
to show.
okay.
So the movie was made for $14 million at the time, the equivalent of $89 million today. It made,
That would be like a $200 million movie today.
Yep,
That's amazing.
and it made $200 million, the equivalent of $1.2 billion today.
Wow.
So a massive hit.
Massive. Very cool.
Okay.
Okay, so not to bring the room down, but I will say that everything I'm talking about, I'm going back as we try to do in the, looking at it through the 74 lens,
Sure.
looking at it through all of those. It was very hard to watch this movie in a post 9/11 world. It just was.
Okay.
I had a couple of moments where I had some trouble watching the movie, just especially when somebody jumped out of the tower to escape the fire, watching some of the firemen go up into the tower. I found that troubling. I have to kind of put that on the table, that
Sure.
that's a little bit, we try not to look at it in our current lens, and none of my notes talk about it, but I was wondering if you had any of that. It was just me. Okay, very possible.
And that's not a reflection on you, that's not commentary on you, it's just
Yeah.
I didn't. And the primary reason
Mhm.
is from the outside of the opening helicopter shot, which
Yeah.
was way too long and
Yes.
completely unnecessary. From the moment the movie started until the moment the movie ended, this was like just munch some popcorn and have
Yes.
a fucking grand old time. I loved this experience of this movie. I take it back. I had not seen this one before.
Oh, okay.
So this was a brand new experience for me. I thought I was going to, with a lot of disaster movies, just be picking it apart, and something in my brain just went, nope, let it be, because you can pick the movie apart 9 ways from Sunday if you want to, but if you don't, and you just let it roll over you, you will have so much more fun. So, I didn't
Okay.
have that experience
Okay.
because, again, something triggered in my brain, which is
Yep.
like, just let this one go, be critical, but just
Yep.
let this one wash over you.
So with the little asterisks that I've already given, I loved this movie. I thought it was, first of all, it was everything I wanted Airport to be and
Yeah.
wasn't.
And it took on a lot like Airport did as well.
Yes.
There were a lot of little subplots.
But they did it right. They did it right. It was a gorgeous spectacle of a movie. It understood the assignment of what is this supposed to be, and I thought it was great. It had, you know, some tense moments, like really, really tense moments where you're like, okay, that old lady is absolutely gonna fall down the elevator shaft. And like when they were inside the building is when I thought that she was gonna die. She absolutely lived, and then she bounced off. She fell out of the elevator, bounced off the building, and I was sitting on my couch and I went, oh, out loud by myself. So I thought it was amazing. I thought for such a large cast, they did a great job of everybody was an individual.
Yeah.
So, and also with killing off Robert Wagner and his girlfriend so quickly, you could see the stakes were high.
Yeah.
Like Robert Wagner was a big star,
Yeah,
and he died pretty quickly in the movie, and you're like, okay, nobody is safe in this movie. I thought they set up that really nicely. You could tell that Paul Newman and Steve McQueen were doing their own stunts. I thought Fred Astaire, he could not keep the bounce out of his step. You know, like, even though he was not playing a dancer, like, walking across, he just had a strut. I thought he was just so adorable. He was the Helen Hayes of the movie. Like, let's take a beloved older actor and make them be a con man.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed tremendously. I thought the things they were able to do were amazing. The people who were on fire and what they had to do there. I thought all of the huge setups they had between the swing and the outside elevator and the different stairwells. So I do have some you know, kind of like little trouble spots, but in general, thoroughly enjoyable.
The budget obviously was for the time was very high budget,
sure.
so you could tell that they did put a lot of that money into the set design, the sets themselves, as well as the stunts that they were doing, because they were practical stunts for the most part. There was the occasional like, hey, we're gonna do a backlit, whatever. But yeah, they were for the most part very practical stunts and a lot of big sets for not a lot of screen time.
Yep.
In that way, it's kind of like, you know, the Marvel movies do. We'll spend $20 million on this thing, it'll last 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
it all paid off because the movie is a pretty good flow.
Yes, and it is, and you're doing the roller coaster motion. It is very, very, very. You're getting to a very tense point, and then you kind of ramp up, and you have a couple of interpersonal scenes, and all of the relationships made sense, but they didn't get in the way of the action.
Yeah. And all of this is predicated on an absolutely stupid, ridiculous premise that this one little faulty wire is going to just suddenly go because someone chinsed on some things.
Exactly.
And it's one wire that starts the entire
And if only O.J.
process.
Simpson had looked at the monitor in the right place, we would not be in this problem. Yeah, he tried to tell us.
It is also over the top that this, you know, brand new immaculate building has that many people dedicated to fire safety.
Yes.
There's an entire floor where there's just people looking out for fire safety. Nothing else. O.J. Simpson's whole crew is just fire safety.
Well, and that confused me at first because I thought they were security. But no, you're right. They were fire safety, and they did not do a good job of helping us at the beginning. The other thing that cracked me up too is that they made some very poor choices along the way.
Oh yeah,
I think that's fair to say. But also, one of the regular firemen is like, "Oh, let's just blow up this thing with the C4 that I happen to have in my suit." You know, I think regular firemen probably don't walk around with C4 all the time. I don't know if that's true. I know it's a tool they use.
Even people that like the military that use C4 don't walk around with C4.
That seems very dangerous.
Yeah.
It seems very dangerous.
So, this now being the second disaster movie, rules for a disaster movie, because there'll be many more going forward.
Okay.
So these are new criteria in disaster movies. Let me know if you agree. So, number one, does the payoff and does the end result, does it work to get to the end result? Are you happy with things are you happy with the things that happen to get you to the end result? So think of the Titanic, for example. The payoff to get to the end, does that actually work for you?
It did work for me. I thought that they did that well. How about you?
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, at the end, I didn't really care who was living and dying. I knew some people had to live and I knew some people had to die.
Yeah.
The only one that you're rooting for to die is the guy who's just being a dick the entire time.
Richard Chamberlain.
Yeah, one, and who, he was the one that did the faulty wiring, he chinsed on the wiring,
And
trying to...
you knew he was going to die from the moment you met him. Yes.
trying to get with somebody else while his wife is just over there and his
Yes.
father-in-law is just over there. Like,
Yes.
that's pretty ballsy there,
It
Richard.
really is, yeah.
So the setup we hit in big disaster movies, you need lots of characters and to be invested in these characters because
Yes.
characters are going to be killed off. So
Yes.
you need to have investor. Did this one have enough character development and the side stories that they go through that you could follow and enjoy them?
I was shocked by the amount of character development that they had, because not only the people that I've talked about today, but even I am a huge Robert Vaughn stan. I love Robert Vaughn. And he wasn't in it that much, but he was a senator who you could see, he was not a sleazy politician.
Yeah.
He was pitching in, he was helping. He died trying to kind of keep things from going off the rails. And so I was like, he didn't even have very many lines, but I could see who he was, and then he was a fairly decent guy.
One of the other rules, and you mentioned this, is people making bad choices. Every disaster movie has people making at least 4 or 5 bad choices
Yes.
to put them in peril to either then die
Yep.
or to be saved. This one, as you mentioned, did have a lot of people making poor choices, like, let's
Very
go this
poor
way, no,
choices.
let's go that way, because that
Let's
seems
continue
better.
to climb up. We've been trapped here for 2 hours. Should we try to find the stairs on the way down? Sorry, I interrupted.
All right, so a couple things that I had. So this is supposed to be a state-of-the-art building, brand new state-of-the-art building. There's
Yes.
a lot riding on it, which is why when it's eventually discovered that there's a fire and the potential problems for the fire, everybody's trying to suppress that information and keep people in the building to pretend everything's fine
Yes.
rather than get them all out.
Yes,
Standard kind of trope, standard kind of plot. It worked for me, it was fine.
me as well.
The Faye's character was kind of hit and miss for me in points. Like, she gets a job offer, they discuss the job offer,
Mhm.
and don't really do much with it after that. Like, it's just kind of a, we need to talk about something to set stakes higher, I guess.
Well, there was one throwaway conversation where she basically said something to him about ask me to go, because he wanted her to go with him to
Right.
his new job. She had a great job offer. And later in the movie, she said something about ask me to go there and I will go with you. And he said, I'll ask you tomorrow, meaning I will live to see you tomorrow. So I think that she was agreeing to go with him to the next job. So it did end
Okay.
there. But she was there to look gorgeous. She had no part. She really was very minimal. I hope she was well paid for this part.
So, you probably saw in the opening credits that this was dedicated to firefighters everywhere.
Yes.
And one of the things that they definitely did focus on, and I thought do a very good job of, is showing the firefighters in action trying to do their jobs. And that was
Yes.
obviously very intentional, like, look at what these guys have to go
Yes.
through. Here's my question. This was 1974, 75, I forget what
Yep.
year we're doing. When the fire trucks first arrive,
Mm-hmm.
they focus on the ladder truck.
The ones that rolled over the hose, by the way. Okay, but anyway, yes.
The ladder truck can go
Yes.
2, maybe 3 stories.
Yes.
This is, the fire's on like 82nd
Uh-huh.
or something like that.
And the people are on 134.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bring the ladder truck.
Well, and even Steve McQueen said something like, we can't fight a fire above 7th floor,
Yeah.
above the 7th floor. So I don't know, they were cool, and everyone likes a fire truck.
Okay.
That's my answer, is everyone likes a fire truck.
Okay. That was it.
Yeah.
I had a great time with this one.
I totally enjoyed it. The only other thing I will say, and this is again more of its time than anything, this took place in San Francisco. There was nobody gay, and there were 3 people of color in the entire movie. So just the population would have been a little bit different had it been made today.
Yeah, you could have, I mean, this is going to sound horrible and I really don't mean it that way, but you could have sprinkled in some of a gay couple in the group of people.
Amongst the crowd,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yep, I agree. There should have been some representation of some kind. The other characters that I love that had such small screen time, the mayor and his wife. I just thought they were adorable.
Okay.
So, yeah. Knew one of them was going to die. Didn't know which one.
So overall, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes.
Do believe that it should have been nominated because it was just so well done.
I think it won an honorary. Did you say that? It won an honorary visual award?
No, it won.
I thought it said honorary Oscar for achievement in visual effects. That's what
It
some
won
of my
best
screens said.
cinematography, editing, and song.
Well, I think this was not a actual fee. This was an honorary one that was not part of the competitive.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure.
Okay.
Tell us whether you can find it. Exactly.
Sometimes we forget you're there. Sorry. All right, Lenny. This is what they would call a biopic today, biographical drama film about comedian Lenny Bruce, one of my personal heroes. Starring Dustin Hoffman, Valerie Perrine, directed by Bob Fosse, which I did not know. This is the second time I've seen it. Produced by Martin Worth, screenplay by Julian Barry, and based on this play of the same name. Nominated for Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, Screenplay, and Cinematography. Didn't win a thing.
Okay, fun fact, the Sherman Hart character, you may have known this already, was based on Milton Berle.
Okay.
They couldn't name him because they were worried that he would sue them, and actually, even though Milton Berle didn't like the dirty talk of Lenny Bruce, he respected him highly, and he's the one that paid for his funeral expenses, because there was no money left. And the actor was Gary Morton, who was Lucille Ball's husband for 40 years, after she divorced Desi.
Fair enough.
All right.
Okay. I will start out by saying how much I love this film.
Okay.
And seeing it for the second time, I had forgotten a lot of the choices that were made in this. The boldest choice, I think, was to tell this story in essentially a documentary style, which to me does really work for this film, because you have like any documentary, you have people talking about a particular moment, and then the next thing is you see that moment.
Yep.
So the setup of that and progressing the story throughout, I thought worked flawlessly. I didn't see a moment where the people were talking about it and then it didn't follow through to what they were actually talking about in the detail that you kind of became accustomed to. So I love that as a choice. And it also, having it be in this kind of omniscient style, does fit very much with Lenny Bruce himself. So I think that was probably a very conscious choice. Obviously it was a conscious choice, but that this was a very specific choice they made to do an homage to the person that they were actually talking about. Do you know much about Lenny Bruce?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen his sets. I've seen, like YouTube or clips here and there of him on different talk shows, some of his underground work. So I also I don't know him to the extent you do. I respect him greatly. I think that he is a brilliant comic. I think he was doing things people were not doing at that time. And also just challenging the First Amendment. Huge First Amendment, fan. I love anyone who challenges it and wins. And so even though he didn't win until later, I thought I have a great deal of respect for him and his comedy.
So having seen a lot of the YouTube clips and things that you can see for his performances, I thought that Hoffman nailed him, absolutely nailed him. He had the rhythms down, he had the speech patterns down, he had the way that Lenny Bruce actually speaks nailed perfectly.
I hated this movie. I'm so sorry. I hated this movie. And part of it is because of Dustin's performance.
Really?
I saw it as I could never see anyone but Dustin Hoffman. And even though I have seen some Lenny Bruce, certainly not as much as you, I kept seeing Dustin Hoffman shining through. I could not see, with biopics you've got either the person who tries to look exactly like the person or the person who tries to get the essence of the person. And I didn't think he did either one. I just could not see anything except for Dustin Hoffman trying to look cool and failing. Because Lenny Bruce is so cool.
This is going to be our first really big fight.
Okay.
Because I 100% disagree with you.
All right. Fair.
The progression that they show him go through, like if you notice, and this was actually true, in the beginning his speech and his mannerisms are a particular way. Once he actually develops what his style is and the things that he wants to talk about, not just being a schlock comic, which is how he starts, but actually getting to things of substance, and once that happens, his mannerisms and his vocal patterns shift and change. And it becomes almost very 60s. There's lots of like, man, like those kind of things. And Hoffman, I thought, did a brilliant job of that evolution to getting towards the end where he's full on Lenny Bruce at the end and he's just embodying him. He had the mannerisms down, man.
The end of it where you see him, where he's got the beard, the curlyish hair, he's let it grow out, and he's not looking, he definitely started as a suit and tie kind of comedian to this more beat comic, you know. But yes, I could see the progression because they changed his clothes and changed his hair and makeup. I could not see Lenny Bruce through there. I heard him in the sets, and I know that those words were almost word for word, and the sets themselves were brilliant and uncomfortable. I mean, there were definitely some that were so uncomfortable and very necessary. Loved the sets, thought they were interesting, very thought-provoking. Could not get past Dustin Hoffman.
All right.
I know, very different.
You are so wrong. What about her? I thought she did a phenomenal job and in particular, when they were doing the interviews, the actual documentary with her, there is a sweetness and innocence to her that comes out far more in those scenes than the actual scenes where she's reenacting the time that she actually had with Lenny. When she's speaking about Lenny, the sweetness and innocent, she's not innocent by any means.
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's what I had. I had written down that she came across as very vulnerable. I loved her. I thought she was amazing. And yes, we're back to agreeing. Because Valerie Prine, I thought was a revelation. I thought she was vulnerable, and yet she was also very brash.
Oh yeah.
And she was able to show both sides of that personality. So I thought she was amazing. And I loved the difference between when she was being filmed and when she was in the moment, because it was a very different personality, thinking back with love and memory of somebody versus living in the moment, which isn't as easy.
And also incredibly honest. Like she...
Yes.
And I know this was obviously written, this was, she was just performing, but she was so brutally honest, particularly about her own drug use, and she would have offhanded comments like, well, when you're a junkie, this is what happens.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would try to downplay or hide that, and she wasn't. She was like, this is exactly how things work. And some people would say that because she's not as smart as some other people, like and sure, maybe the intellect didn't kick in to say maybe I shouldn't be saying these things, but I think that's an oversimplification of her.
She was very honest.
Yes.
No, I liked her as well. And also, I liked the construct. I agree with you on the documentary style. I liked the, let's talk about what happened, let's see what happened. I thought that worked well. I loved the black and white of it all.
Yep.
What do you think about the whole drug use piece? Because, I mean, the man died of a drug overdose, and we saw him, in the throes of a terrible set in which he was not himself, and he was obviously under the influence. Prior to that, he went off a cliff. There was no gradual decline, and maybe there wasn't in his life, but it feels like the first time we see drugs, he injects her with heroin. They both go on a trip. The people around them, they're in the drug scene. They're in jazz clubs, a lot of pot. You never really see him smoking it, or at least I didn't. But then it's like she's gone off, and she is clearly a junkie. He's taking care of his child and hanging out with his mother and doing, making lots of money and has a beautiful home and has a butler. And then he's in the throes of drug abuse. And maybe that's the way it happened, but it just seemed odd.
It is, but also you have to remember that even though he was the one that basically got them into it, she's the one that dove headfirst into it. And when she got in trouble, when she went away, he cleaned up and was totally responsible and sober. I mean, he smoked like a chimney, but and was that way until she came back.
Right, so it very much blamed his drug abuse on her.
Yes.
And that may or may not have been reality.
Yeah, and you can't blame somebody else for your own faults, but I do believe that if he had not welcomed her back out of prison, that he would not have gone down that path again, because she slips almost instantly.
Yes.
And he still holds out for a little bit, and then because it's constantly around, he dives back into it again, and he gave everything when he went back in. And that was because of his weakness and her influence. So, but that is true.
Oh, okay. All right. And I wasn't sure how that all happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he did die on a bathroom floor.
Oh, I will say that last shot was great because he was naked, dead on a floor, and that was obscene.
Yep.
And that to me reflected that conversation he had about what is obscene and what is not. It's not the word, it's not this. It's like, it's not the picture of somebody dead on the floor. It is the fact that he is dead, so young, so brilliant, so talented. That's obscene. And so that's kind of, I really like that shot, even though it was terrible. Terrible, lovely shot.
And also the almost 2-year obsession with his court cases and only talking about that over and over and over
Sure.
again was 100% true as well. Like, he just became fixated
Yeah.
and could not let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't died, if he could have eventually let it go, if he eventually would have won his court cases, who knows. But so you are so wrong, 100% wrong. I'm questioning
Says you, but that's
whether
okay.
or not we even need to do
Do we
this anymore.
continue? Exactly. Oh, I know. We've disagreed one other time, in which I was also correct. And yeah.
All right.
All right. Twice in 6 podcasts. That's not so bad.
The Godfather Part 2. Just because
Yes.
that sounds funny to me.
Yeah.
The produced and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, loosely based on The Godfather from the first one with Mario Puzo. As we mentioned in the first one, there was a lot that the novel didn't actually make it in the movie. And Puzo once again co-wrote the screenplay with Coppola. It's based on the first Godfather, of course. Stars Al Pacino, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton, Robert De Niro, Talia Shire, Morgana King, John Cazale, Mariana Hill, Lee Strasberg. So all the actors came back, and a couple new ones. It was nominated for pretty much everything. Best Original Dramatic Score, Costume Design, Art Direction, Adapted Screenplay, Supporting Actress, Supporting Actor, Actor, Director, Best Picture. It won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Robert De Niro, Adapted Screenplay, Art Direction, and Original Dramatic Score.
Okay. So, a couple of fun facts. There is nothing that people don't know about The Godfather 2. So, probably people know this, but I'm going to throw it out anyway. First one is Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro are the only 2 actors to win a Best Actor award for playing the same character.
Oh, okay.
And also, they had to reshoot some of the flashback scenes because the original costumes for men had zippered trousers. And there were no zippers at that time that someone pointed out halfway through shooting. So they had to go back, create some button-fly trousers, and they had to reshoot some of those scenes.
That's awesome.
By your laughing, maybe you didn't know that. So I'm
No,
glad I
mean,
found one.
I just think it's funny that with such attention to detail that is put into these, that someone, like something as simple as a zipper, somebody would overlook.
By.
Yep. Okay, so this film is obviously the next chapter in the family, and this is a split film. So we have the moving forwards with Michael now firmly being the Godfather, what he's taking the family towards, and we have the backstory of the Godfather and how he became the Godfather. I'm going to start out heavy hitting with this one.
Bring it.
The flashback scenes where the Godfather becomes the Godfather are amazing, brilliant, up to the standards of the original Godfather. The scenes moving forward were not.
Okay.
I probably, this is my 3rd, maybe 4th time seeing this, and so going in this time with a critical lens, I was like, nope, it is not the same. The quality that was there in the first is not here, and I think it's only because it's not the acting, it wasn't any of the technical aspects of it, it wasn't, the choice to film in this particular area or anything. It's literally the story. The story is too fragmented and does not have the cohesion that the first one did, so it lacks.
Completely agree with everything you said.
Really?
The sections with Robert De Niro, and first of all, he's electric. He is amazing. I thought he was just wonderful. But yes, and I think you may have said this when we talked offline weeks ago, was the flashbacks all had a purpose.
Yeah.
Everything meant something in present day. They went back to investigate something and throw some color on it. And then it came forward. All of those were spectacular. I loved the recast of Clemenza and Fish, I forget his name. But yeah, I thought that they did a wonderful job of the young them, so I thought that was wonderful. Moving forward, I still think it was in and of itself a great movie because of the acting, the characters, all of those pieces, but they're with the business instead of the family. And so that's the thing that bothered me most. The whole movie, the whole point of Godfather is the family. And this, you're barely with the family.
Yeah.
I mean, half of the family is dead or fighting or gone or about to be dead, and
all the lessons he learned in the first one, that it is all about family, you protect the family.
He lost them.
Yeah, he makes a very conscious choice
Yep.
to go against his family for the sake of business.
Yes.
That is not what the lesson was.
But don't you think that's the point? Is that's why he's not successful and he has lost everything. He loses his wife, he loses his brother, I think, his mother is dead. That's why he loses everything. It's because he didn't learn that lesson.
Yes, but then I go back to the question of why. I mean, why do we have to go through that particular voyage then? With such a solid foundation in the first one, why do we have to devote all of this time and energy to making the wrong choice? Unless, and I'm only going to say this because we know what happened, unless you do have a setup for, and this would be a true trilogy, where the third one then explores and explains better why we went down this path, which we know the third one doesn't, because it's a crap movie.
It is in fact a crap movie.
And that would be payoff for me if that was indeed the case. I don't understand why we had to focus, except for it's a choice. We're both writers. We make choices, you stick with them, and you go with it. It was a choice they made. I think it was a bad one.
Have you ever seen the movie Avalon?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a beautiful
That's
movie.
one of my favorite movies. So it is to me, you look at that movie and it is all about the family, the grandparents, and you bring everybody over from the old country and everybody lives next to each other. And then over the course of the movie, people move away and they have little, fault lines in the family. They're watching TV instead of eating at the dining room table. And I think part of The Godfather 2, I'm getting there, I think part of The Godfather 2 is the world has changed. The family is not as important because the family unit isn't as important at that time.
Okay.
So I think it's reflecting society as well as reflecting his bad choices.
But this is only I don't remember the exact timeline.
It's
This
like
is shortly thereafter.
Early 60s, late 50s, early 60s.
But
probably.
it's not that many years
No,
from the
it's
ending
probably
of...
within 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the beginning is immediate because the door shuts,
Yeah.
and so that is the ending of the last movie. Is the beginning of this movie.
Okay.
But no, I understand. But I thought it was still a very well done movie.
I disagree with the choice.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with what the area of focus for the movie. Having said that, it is in the hands of a very skilled director.
Yep.
So if I could get over my problem, I would be able to enjoy it more.
Yes.
Because everything is wonderfully done about it. I can't pick anything apart except for the inherent structure of the movie.
If I could start the movie with Vito Corleone's father's death and the funeral procession, follow all of that time in Italy, follow his time in New York, then go to, kind of like when Marlon Brando picks up at the wedding, and then end with the shutting of the door, that would be the perfect movie.
You said a while ago that there's an online version which is the linear version,
Yes.
so you start with the backstory and then you go through?
Just in 2. It's
okay.
So 1 is its own movie, but just in Godfather 2, it starts and does move chronologically, and I think it's a travesty.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, everything about it technically is the same quality as the first one.
Yeah.
I just can't get over the inherent choice that was made and going against the lesson. It just bothers me, therefore the movie bothers me.
But don't you love that last scene when they're all together again, the family? And that just shows me again how poor his choices were. That like they are just they got James Caan back, they've got, Carlos back, and everybody except for Marlon Brando is sitting around the table.
That's just a flashback scene though, right?
No, they filmed that new.
But that scene is a flashback scene. Okay.
Yes, but that scene was filmed
I got you.
for 2. They had to bring back James Caan. Marlon Brando, they tried, and he wouldn't come back for the amount of money they were offering.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I do not like it as much as Godfather 1, which is one of my personal favorites, but I still think it is incredibly well done.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. I think I've hammered my point home pretty significantly.
I do. I agree. Can we talk about Diane Keaton for a minute?
Sure.
What are your thoughts about her? I cannot get over not liking her.
She was fine. My sister has a saying where she just kind of goes, "It's fine."
Yeah.
And that I've realized applies applies to a lot of things in life.
It does.
And I will say that I think that applies to Diane's performance in this particular film.
Okay.
It was fine. It filled the need. It filled the role. Could somebody else have done better? Probably, but she was already established from the first one.
Yep.
You're gonna bring her in, and she's gonna do whatever. I mean,
I didn't like Kay. I think she did fine, but I just thought Kay was a lump on a log.
yeah, and Kate kind of gets put in the background for this. She becomes more just something for Michael to sound off than
Yeah.
an actual, real, live, thriving human being. Which, again, it's fine.
Okay, the big question.
I'm going to ask you to go first.
Okay.
Do you think The Godfather 2 should have won for Best Picture?
I am going to say yes with an asterisk.
Okay.
And how about you?
What's the
What's
asterisk?
The asterisk is it is a darn shame that this slate of movies came together in the same year. Because were another movie picked for Best Picture, I would have been okay with it. So we'll see. What about you? Did they pick the right movie?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
But I first want to say the movie that I had the most fun with this time.
Oh, Towering Inferno.
100%.
Absolutely.
Just such a fun ride. And this is where we're going to absolutely fight. I think Lenny should have won for Best Picture.
Okay.
I think start to finish that movie, it's not flawless by any means, but it is so incredibly well crafted, and the performances and the story. And I recognize that I had probably a bias because
You are letting your love for Lenny Bruce color all of your editorial choices
and
here.
that may be slightly true.
Okay.
It is not true to the degree that you think it is.
Okay.
Because you are false and wrong in your, I don't even know.
Opinion? Is this an opinion that we have?
Well, opinions can't be wrong. It's an opinion.
Yes.
You're just,
Therefore, I am
you're
not
just
wrong.
wrong.
So Lenny was my fifth choice. So I would say if Chinatown had gotten Best Picture this year, or if it had been released in any other year, I think it would have deserved Best Picture. I think The Godfather 2 still had so much going for it with the people, with the story, and at least the Robert De Niro parts were better than everything. And I did not have to pay any money for watching Lenny, and I want my money back.
Fair enough. I can't believe you hated the movie that much.
I did. I wrote
And
down...
and it's basically just because of Dustin.
Mostly because of Dustin Hoffman, and because I just did not see any essence of Lenny Bruce. And I'm not as close to him, so you are, and therefore you probably saw things that I could not.
Well, I saw the truth, and I don't know what you
saw
were watching.
this as almost unwatchable.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay, so you folks, you need to write in and tell her how wrong she is about this movie.
Right.
All right,
Yeah.
do the liking and subscribing and all that kind of stuff.